Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, which is Pensions the Basics in Sage 50 Payroll. My name's Alice and I'm going to be your host and presenter for the session. I'm also joined by my colleague Duncan in the background, who is ready and waiting to answer your questions throughout the session. Now, speaking of today's session, it is part of our Pensions Discovery 2025 badge series, where if you attend at least 5 of the sessions and the quiz, you'll earn your very own badge, but more on that towards the end of the session. And a little look at what we'll be covering today too. So I'll begin with an introduction, a little bit of an overview of automatic enrolment and what your ongoing duties as an employer are when it comes to pensions. We'll then move on to setting up your pension scheme, so how to do this in Sage 50 Payroll and all of the important settings to check there. We'll then look at assigning your scheme, so whether that's to an individual employee or to multiple employees at once to save you a little bit of time. You've got multiple options there. And then lastly, we will look at checking those contributions. And if you do need to amend anyone's contributions, I'll be showing some quick ways to do that too. So that is what we've got in store today. But let's begin with that introduction then, because under the Pensions Act 2008, every employer in the UK must put certain employees into a workplace pension scheme and contribute towards it. And this is called automatic enrolment. So if you employ at least one person, you are an employer, and you do have certain legal duties that begin on the day that your first employee started working for you. And this is called your duties start date. So I just want to begin with these 4 steps of automatic enrolment, just kind of briefly talk about these. But the first one is going to be choosing a pension scheme. So you need to choose this and get it set up with your chosen pension provider, and you and your employees will pay money into this scheme. Now, there are loads of different options out there in terms of which provider to go with and what type of pension scheme to set up for them as well. So that is totally up to you and your company. That's the first thing to bear in mind there. Next step is working out who to put into the pension scheme or assessing your employees. So you will need to assess the employees' age and wage to determine what's called their worker category and whether or not they're going to be eligible for automatic enrolment. Now, we do have a whole webinar on the pension assessment, which does go through in more detail assessing your employees and more on those worker types as well. So definitely get yourself signed up for that if you'd like to know more about that side of things. You'll also need to write to your staff, also known as sending pension correspondence, just so they know how their automatic enrolment and things is going to apply to them. And a 4th step is to declare your compliance. So you'll have 5 months after your duty start date to do this, and it's basically just declaring that not only is your workplace pension compliant, but that all of the information that you've provided is accurate too. And if you would like more information or advice on these 4 steps, I have attached a link at the bottom of this slide. And this just takes you to the Pensions Regulator website. They've got some really great information on there too. Now, once you've completed these 4 steps, your duties don't end there. You do still have ongoing duties as an employer. So a couple, just a bit of information about these. So first one is to assess your employees, so assessing their age and wage each time you pay them to see if they need to be put into the pension scheme, so checking for any changes from one period to the next. Now you can do this manually, and I will talk about that in a little bit, by checking the information in the employee's record, or if you're a pensions module user, you can do that via the pension assessment. Every 3 years, you also need to carry out re-enrolment duties. So this will be re-enrolling any employees who've left your scheme. You also need to continue paying into your pension scheme. Now, this does include checking that you're paying at least the minimum contribution levels, and they're currently 3% for your employer's minimum, and then 8% total minimum contributions. That'll be employer and employee combined. And then last but not least, to manage requests to join or leave the scheme and to keep record of this too. But again, more information on these duties by following the link there on the handout. So once you've set up your pension scheme with your provider and you've sorted everything out on that side, it is nice and easy to set up your scheme in Sage 50 Payroll, providing that you've got the details and the information that you need, because the settings that you enter in the programme are going to determine how the pension contributions are calculated. So just a bit of a kind of list of the information that you will need. So first thing you need to know is what type of scheme do you operate? So is it a stakeholder, master trust? There's loads of different types of schemes out there. Is it a qualifying scheme for automatic enrolment? And does it also use qualifying earnings for pensionable pay? So you need to know whether it does. If it doesn't, you will need to know what pay elements are going to be pensionable. So will it just be the salary, commission, bonuses, things like that? Just double check with your provider what's going to be pensionable there. You also need to know whether it's a salary sacrifice scheme. The settings will be slightly different, and of course it will be calculated differently as well if it is. And you need to know what the contributions are. So is it going to be a fixed amount that's going to be contributed, or will it be a percentage? And how much of each, whatever's necessary there. And are the employee contributions deducted before or after tax? This is another setting that will affect how the contributions are calculated, so definitely worth double checking this. And last but not least, what is your provider reference? So that's kind of a reference number that you will be able to get from your pension provider, which you can put into the pension scheme in SH50 Payroll. Now, if you are unsure about any of these and how your pension scheme is set up, your pension provider will be able to provide this information for you. So do double check this, make sure you've got the correct information, because as I say, Payroll will look at these different settings and determine how the contributions and things are calculated based on this. But once you've got all of this information, in terms of setting the scheme up in Payroll itself, I do have some screenshots here to go through before we go into the demonstration. But it's just the case of going to your company tasks and then going to pension schemes. And in here, you will have a list of some kind of default generic pension schemes, which you'll be able to rename and edit. So you can change the settings and the contributions and things to match your pension scheme. And I'll show you how to do this in a moment. Once that scheme is set up, you will also need to check your pay elements for pension contributions to determine whether they're going to be included or excluded from your pension scheme calculations, including whether it uses qualifying earnings, which I mentioned a bit earlier. Now, if the payment does count towards qualifying earnings, you will see there's a little tick box in the middle of the screen there called qualifying earnings. You just need to tick that to tell Payroll that it is. And what counts as qualifying earnings? Lots of things, to be honest. So just some information on the right-hand side there. So payments that do count towards qualifying earnings, this is things like salary, commission, overtime, your statutory payments too, and a few more examples there on the right-hand side. But other than this, just back to those settings in the middle, if the payment should be included and used to calculate the pension contributions, there are some other tick boxes to be aware of. So you've got the pension main and pension AVC tick boxes. AVC is just an additional voluntary contribution made by the employee. And then on the left, you do have that salary sacrifice box for pensions too. So if you do have a salary sacrifice pension scheme and you want to use this particular pay element for that contribution, you will just have to make sure that is ticked too. So that is what you'll need to check for a pay element, and you would need to repeat these steps to check each pay element and just make sure it is subject to the right things using those tick boxes. And then, as I say, Payroll will use those settings along with the pension scheme settings themselves to work out the contributions. But without further ado, let's dive into a demo. I do want to show you a couple of the pension scheme settings for some schemes that I've got set up, along with the pay element settings too. So I'm logged into my company here, just got a monthly payroll, and we're just going to dive straight into those pension schemes. So you'll find them in the company section and just by going to pension schemes. This brings up a list of just default schemes. You can see just kind of generic names there. But at the top, there is a couple that I've already set up. So I've got a nest pension scheme. I also have a salary sacrifice scheme too. Now, still in this window at the bottom, you can leave this blank like me, but you do have the option of adding what's called an enrolment review date. And this will be the next date that you need to review your pension schemes for automatic enrolment. So you can pop that in there as a bit of a reminder. But let's take a look at my nest pension scheme first. I'll just make sure that's highlighted and click edit. And I just want to point out this message. So if the scheme is assigned to at least one person, which mine is, you will get this just as a kind of reminder. Obviously, just any settings that you change will affect it for them too. So I'll click OK. And these are the pension scheme settings. We've got 4 tabs in here. We've got details, employee, employer and provider. So we'll work through these. I just want to show you kind of the most important things in them. And we'll start with details. So at the top there is a reference number given to the scheme by Payroll. Notice this is greyed out, so you aren't able to change this, but you are able to change pretty much everything else in this window. So next thing will be the description box. This is just where you'll enter the name of your scheme. So I've called my Nest Pension, followed by this drop-down menu. So this is where you'll be able to select the type of scheme that you're using. There are some which are going to apply the relevant settings of the scheme type automatically. But if you can't see your scheme type in here, you do also have the option of other. That's just what I've selected there. And this is where you'll just be able to select those settings manually. After this, the next few options, these are types of schemes which aren't used anymore, so not to worry about those too much. But then you've got things like a GPP, so that's a group personal pension, or a PPP, so personal pension plan, and a couple of others like stakeholder and master trust too. I'm just going to leave mine as other, just as it was before. But remember, if you're unsure, just double check with your pension provider. The next setting here, this is a SCON, or a scheme contracted out number. Now these are no longer relevant since contracted out schemes have been abolished, so you're more than okay to just leave that blank like me. And then we'll move on to these tick boxes. So these are really important tick boxes here, and these relate to the automatic enrolment schemes. So you do have a bit of information about each of them if you're unsure, but qualifying scheme and uses qualifying earnings for pensionable pay. So qualifying scheme, this should be ticked just to indicate that your pension scheme is a qualifying scheme. So what that means is it hits the minimum requirements set by the pensions regulator for use with automatic enrolment workplace pension schemes. So mine does. I've just put a tick in there. And the next tick box, this is for schemes that use qualifying earnings for pensionable pay. This does apply to more recent schemes since the introduction of automatic enrolment. But on the presentation, I gave a list of the payments included in qualifying earnings, and essentially it's any payments subject to tax or national insurance. So I've just got that tick too. Now with this setting as well, just to bear in mind, pension contributions, they will be calculated on earnings between an upper and lower threshold. You can find this threshold in your company legislation, but for a scheme that uses qualifying earnings for pensionable pay, the contributions are going to be calculated on the earnings, as I say, between those thresholds. And Duncan will be covering this in more detail in the pension calculations webinar that we've got as part of this pension series as well. A couple of other main settings that I want to talk about just at the bottom here. So if your scheme is a salary sacrifice pension scheme, make sure that you tick this box. So the contributions will work slightly differently for these types of schemes. There's not a direct employee contribution. Instead, it's a salary sacrifice amount instead. And I will be showing you my salary sacrifice scheme that I've set up, just so you can see the settings there, along with how to check the contributions for that type of scheme a bit later. And for those of you who do have a salary sacrifice scheme, there is actually something new in the pension scheme settings since the updated version 31 of Payroll. And this is to add employer national insurance savings to the pension contribution. So some pension providers do allow the reinvestment of national insurance savings for employers and or employees into the employee's pension scheme when you've got a salary sacrifice scheme. And as I say, from the most recent version of Payroll, you can actually automatically add that employer national insurance saving to the contribution if you wanted. And you'll just be able to do that by ticking this box. But more on that in our salary sacrifice pensions webinar. We'll be going through that with you. So that's the details tab. Basically just some tick boxes there to kind of worry about, and just the type of pension scheme that it is along with the name. But let's move on to that employee tab. And at the top, you see we do have a drop down, so you'll be able to kind of choose the contribution that you've got. So is it a percentage or a fixed amount? And what's the amount to? So you can see I've got mine set to 5%. So it's going to be 5% of the employee's qualifying earnings. And on the right-hand side, you can see a list of different tick boxes. We do have a lot of them relating to statutory payments. They're greyed out, but they are ticked for me. And that's because I've specified that my scheme uses qualifying earnings in the details tab. So you can see we've ticked that box there. So Payroll knows that these are going to be included there, so you aren't able to change that yourself. Now, the last important setting that I do want to show you on this tab is this last tick box, deduct before tax. This is going to relate to the tax relief arrangement that you've got, and you will need to make sure that you've got your scheme set up to either deduct before tax, if your scheme uses something called a net paid tax relief arrangement, or after tax. So this would mean that the tick box would be unticked, like mine, and that's known as a relief at source arrangement. So the way that after tax works is you would deduct the pension, obviously after tax, but then you would reduce the contribution by 20%, which is the basic rate of tax, and this is then claimed back by the pension provider directly from HMRC. So Payroll does all those calculations for you, depending on whether you've got this setting ticked or unticked. But as I say, more details in the pension calculations webinar. Moving on to the employer tab now. So same option to select fixed or percentage, and of course entering that amount depending on what your contributions are. I've got mine set to 3%, so combined we've got 3% employer, 5% employee, and I've hit that minimum requirement of 8%. And then just a little look at the provider tab too. So this is where you'll be able to enter the provider details, such as the provider's name. If you want to add any other information like the address, you can do. But an important thing you will need to enter here is that provider's reference, hence why I did say that was information that you did need. But that is my scheme setup, and some more information about those settings too. So just a recap of the most important ones. If you go back to the details tab, this tick box here to say it uses qualifying earnings, that is a very important one. Along with, on the employee tab, the deduct before tax tick box. So just triple check that you've got those correct there when you're setting up that scheme in Payroll. But again, if you're unsure, just check with your pension provider. And I'll click OK just to close out of that scheme. Now, while we're in here, I would also like to show you the other pension scheme that I've got set up. So this is my salary sacrifice scheme. Again, I'll click Edit, and I do get that message because I have assigned it to an employee. So as you can see, you can set up multiple schemes and then just assign them to the relevant employees. But we've got the same settings options as before, but this time, of course, you can see I do have salary sacrifice ticked. And the first thing that does is ungrade this new option for adding the employer national insurance savings to the pension contribution. So if I wanted to do that, I now have the option to tick it. What that setting also does is completely get rid of that deduct before tax option. So we don't have that tick box there anymore. And that's not a relevant setting for this type of pension scheme. So Payroll knows just to get rid of that as it's not appropriate. But same applies with the tick boxes in the middle here. So it is still a qualifying scheme and it does still use qualifying earnings of pensionable pay. So I've got those ticked. And same contributions as the other scheme. I've got 5% and 3%. So combined for employer and employee, I've got that 8% minimum there. But they're the pension scheme settings. Just want to kind of walk you through a couple of those. And other than that, as I said on the slides, it is really important to check your pay element settings too. So still in the company tasks, a couple of options down, we'll just go to pay elements and take a look at a couple of these. So you need to make sure that these are included or excluded as appropriate in the pension calculations, and of course have the correct settings for this. But to check them, let's start with my basic pay element. We'll just click Edit at the bottom. And hopefully you'll recognise this from the slides. Basically just loads of tick boxes in the middle to double check. So the section we're bothered about mainly is this middle section with the pension tick boxes, and then of course the salary sacrifice one on the left too. First thing, I just want to check that this pay element is included in qualifying earnings. So as I say, pretty much all payments subject to tax and national insurance should have this ticked. But if you're unsure, I have loads of information on the handout. Then also pension main and pension ABC ticked. We do want to include this basic pay element as pensionable for the main contribution and for any additional voluntary contributions that there might be too. And since I do have a salary sacrifice pension scheme, I also need this to be included in salary sacrifice pensions. So that is ticked for me as well. And because all four of them are ticked, this pay element is fully pensionable and part of the qualifying earnings. So anything paid to this employee through this basic pay element will be included in the calculations for pension contributions. And if you've made any changes here, just a case of clicking OK to save those. We'll just double check my expenses pay element next. Click edit again. And this time I want to make sure that the pension boxes are unticked. So this does not count towards qualifying earnings. It's just expenses, they don't count towards that. And it's not counted towards the employee's pension either. So I don't want anything paid through this pay element to count towards those calculations. So completely untick there. And we'll just work through. So my commission pay element. Now this is subject to be included towards the employee's qualifying earnings, so commission is something that counts towards that. However, my particular pension scheme only requires the basic pay to be used in the calculations for the contributions. So yes, it's included in qualifying earnings, but I don't want it to be included towards the calculations for the contributions themselves. So the rest of those tick boxes are going to be unticked. And same story for overtime as well. Let me just double check that this is correct. Yep, so it's still included towards the qualifying earnings, but not as part of the actual calculations for the contributions. So that is the 4 elements that I've got there. Now, quick tip from me as well, if you do have a lot of pay elements that you need to check, I just want to show you a report that might come in really handy for you. So if we just go to the report section, I do already have it favorited, but you can find this in the company section, and it's called the payment types report. So I'll just preview this for you. But this is going to show you all of the settings of the pay elements that you've got set up in your company. So if you've got loads of them, this will probably save you a lot of time when it comes to checking what the kind of settings are when it comes to pensions. So you can more effectively check which ones are subject to pensions already and qualifying earnings and things like that. You've got a Y for yes, as in the box is ticked, and then an N for no, obviously that the box is clear. And this might just give you a good indication of which ones that you need to edit, just so you're not kind of searching through each of them individually. So that is the payment types report, and you'll find that in the company section of the reports. But little recap there, so set up the pension scheme according to the information that you've got from your pension provider, and then double check your pay elements as well to determine whether they're going to be included in qualifying earnings or not, and also towards the pension calculations. But now that that is set up, that does bring us on to the next section, which is all about assigning your employees the pension schemes. So as part of your ongoing duties as an employer, you must assess your employees each time you pay them. So I did touch on this before. You can do this manually, or if you're a pensions module user, that'll be via the pension assessment. As I say, we do have a separate webinar coming up going through assessing your employees in a lot more detail using that pension assessment, if you would like some more information there. Essentially, you're going to assess your employees to determine which worker category that they fall into, and these categories are eligible, non-eligible, or entitled. And eligible employees, these are the worker category that must be automatically enrolled into your pension scheme, so the scheme will be assigned to them. Now, 3 things are going to be checked to assess what worker type they are, and that's going to be the employee's age, the employee's UK worker status, and their wage as well. So if you didn't have the pensions module and you were manually assessing them, to kind of check these for their age, you would just be able to check your process date. And in the employee's record, you do have the age on the right-hand side of the personal tab. Same with the UK worker status, that'll be in the record as well. On the employment tab, there is a checkbox there which you can check whether it's selected or cleared. And then for the wage, you're going to check your process date. And in Enter Payments, you do have a tab called Information. That has different folders just providing more kind of figures and information on certain things, including pensions. So in the pensions folder in there, you will be able to see the employees' qualifying earnings this period, just to help you assess them and see if they are eligible for automatic enrolment. But as I say, for pensions module users, the pension assessment does all of that automatically for you. But once you know who is eligible and needs to be automatically enrolled, it would then just be a case of assigning the scheme to the employee. So pension scheme can be assigned manually in the employee's record or automatically via the pension assessment. If you are a pensions module user, I just want to make an important note here. So do not assign the pension scheme manually in the record if you use the pension assessment. What you need to do is let the pension assessment do all of that for you. And I've just included that on the slide there if you do have the handout, just as a bit of a reminder. But for those of you doing it manually, I will now go to a demo and just show you how you would go about doing that. So back in my company, and for the sake of this webinar, I have actually already assigned a scheme to a few of my employees, but I do still want to show you where you do this. So I've just highlighted a couple of my employees there, and we'll open up their records. So to assign a pension scheme to an individual employee, you'll go into the record, you'll go to the pensions tab, and in here, you've got an option for manage schemes. So you can see I've already got that Nest pension in there and assigned to them, but if you didn't, this will be blank, and all you would need to do is click add, and you'll see this window come up. So just a case of filling in some of this information. Firstly, you're going to select your scheme in this top drop down. This will bring up a list of all of the company pension schemes, so you'll just need to select the relevant one. Let's just pretend it was that Nest pension. I would select that, and I would then be able to provide a join scheme date. It does automatically fill one in for you, just as whatever your process date is set to, but double check that's correct. If not, of course, just change that. And then kind of other main thing in here to check are these contributions at the bottom. So it has just pulled through those default contributions that are set up in the company pension scheme. But if you do need to amend it for an individual, you are able to do that here. And even if there are other employees on the same pension scheme, it will only change for this employee if you change it in here. But I'll just cancel that out for now. So that's how you assign it to an individual. And just to show you again, this time on my other employee, again, we can see they've already got that salary sacrifice scheme there. But I'll click Manage Schemes. We can see they were in a Nest pension up until 2021, but they've since been on the salary sacrifice scheme since October 2024. If I was adding a new scheme to them, I would click Add. And then again, just same information in here. So select that pension scheme from the drop-down. Add or double check this join scheme date, and then just review these contributions at the bottom as well. This is also where you'd be able to add any additional voluntary contributions if that's something that the employee needed. So fairly straightforward to add it to an individual, but let's say you were introducing a new pension scheme to everyone, or you've just got a lot of people to add in general. You might have just had an influx of new starters, for example. You don't have to do it individually in their record, and you are actually able to use something called a global change to add it to multiple or all of the employees at once. So I just want to show you whereabouts that is. So I'll highlight everyone, and let's just say I was adding the salary sacrifice scheme to everyone. I'm going to go to the Tasks menu, click Global Changes, go down to Pensions, and then click Add a Pension Scheme. From here, again, it's going to be a drop down just with all of the different pension schemes in the company. So I can select the relevant one. I can tell Payroll whether it's going to be their primary scheme or not, just using this tick box. And then it would just be a case of clicking OK. It will come up with a confirmation message, just obviously it is a big change to make to multiple people. So do you want to proceed with it? If you wanted to, you will go ahead and click yes. And that would just confirm those changes there. I will just click no. Obviously, I do already have people in that pension scheme. So that is an option to add it to multiple employees, and it will just save you from doing that individually. Should save you a lot of time there. But yeah, depending on what you need, you do have those different options. And just a reminder, you can find all of this information that I've put on the slides if you download the handout, just using that piece of paper icon on the right-hand side of your screen. And just a reminder of that global change, if you did want to add it to multiple employees, you'll highlight everyone or the relevant employees, go to Tasks, Global Changes, Pensions, and then Add a Pension Scheme. But now that those schemes are assigned, that does bring us onto the last section of the webinar, which is going to be checking those contributions, calculating, and if you need to amend them, how you'll be able to do that. So I've got two pension schemes, as you've seen, and the way that you'll view those contributions for the employee and employer, they are slightly different for each of those scheme types. So I want to show you how to view both of them. I did touch on this before as well, but you do also have the option of amending an employee's pension contribution. So even if they are in the same scheme as somebody else, if you go into the employee's record where I just showed you, you can amend it there for them, and it will just, everyone else, it won't change anyone else's contributions there either. So let's go back to the demo and we'll check those contributions in Enter Payments. I'll just use those same two employees I was using before. So we'll go to Payroll. I've already checked my process date, it's set to my next pay date, which is 30th of June, and we'll open up Enter Payments. So in here, just the Payments tab as normal, so we do have those pay elements that I showed you before. Remember, we did specify whether we wanted these to be included or excluded from the qualifying earnings, and the pension calculations as well. But if I just go to the Summary tab, I see Payments on the left and Deductions on the right, including the pension contributions for the employee. So remember, this is the employee who's on my Nest pension scheme, and we can see their employee contributions just on the right hand side in that box there, which is £85.20. For the employer contributions for this period, if you click on the employer's box at the bottom, you can see we do have the national insurance for the employer. We also have the pension contribution for the current period. So for the employer, that's £63.90. So we can see that that's calculating and that's looking as it should there. So I do want to show you the employee on the salary sacrifice scheme now too, because that will look slightly different. There we go, so just moved on to them. Obviously I'm still in the Summary tab, but this time, although they are contributing, we can see that there's a 0 there for the employee's contribution. This can sometimes catch people out. They can sometimes think that it's not calculating for them. And that's not the case. It is just that it kind of shows differently in Enter Payments. Obviously, salary sacrifice schemes do work a bit differently there. So completely normal for that to show a 0 for the employee. Because what it does instead, if we go to the employers section, it shows a combined amount in the employers. So this is actually a combined amount of the employer's contribution and the employees. So notice this is much higher than that previous employee. So this shows employer and employee. So we can see both of them are calculating okay. That's all looking as I'm expecting to. But if there was a change of plan and you did need to amend an employee's contribution, I just want to show you a kind of quick way to get into the record and change that. So if you do have a lot of employees and you're working through Enter Payments, just to save you from closing Enter Payments down and losing your place, you can click this icon in the top left. And that's like a little shortcut to the employee record. And then if you were changing those contributions, you can go to Pensions, and the same again, just Manage Schemes and Edit. And you are able to amend these here and it will reflect straight away in Enter Payments. So for this employee on the Nest pension scheme, let's say that I was changing their employee contributions to a fixed amount of £100. I'd be able to add that in there. Let's add an additional voluntary contribution of £20 and then click OK. So employee contribution there should be £120. I'll save that and go back to Enter Payments, and straight away I can see that change reflected there. So employee contribution is now showing as £120, but of course we've still got the employers just at 3%, which we left it at there. So it's overridden the contribution for this employee, nobody else, and that would remain the same amount just until I've manually changed that back again. So you would need to go back and amend that contribution back if you needed to. And just a reminder, if you are unsure what the contributions should be, do double check with your pension provider before you go ahead and make any changes. But that is how to check and amend the contributions in Enter Payments. Just want to remind you that it is a little bit different there for salary sacrifice pension schemes, but normally you would see the employer pension contributions for the current period in the employer box. And then just on the deductions side of the summary tab, you'll be able to see those employee pension contributions for the current period. Salary sacrifice, remember that will show as 0, and you'll have that combined amount in the employer box instead. And then if you do need to amend those contributions, you've got that shortcut to the employee's record and enter payments, where you can go to pensions, manage schemes and edit, and then as necessary you can change from a percentage to a fixed amount or change the amounts to whatever you'll need. But with that being said, that does bring us to the end of the main content for Pensions the Basics today. So before we do wrap things up and continue to answer your questions, I would like to go through some further support with you as well. For pensions, me and Duncan have loads coming up this month, including more on the pensions webinar badge. So we've got things like the pension assessment, pension calculations, salary sacrifice pensions too. That is a brand new session this month. So definitely get yourself signed up for that. And just to tell you a little bit more about this and how it's going to work with the badge and things like that, I do have just a short video to show you where my colleague Matt will be talking all about that. So I'll play this video and I will be back in a few moments.
Get ready to earn your Pension Discovery Badge with Sage 50 Payroll. Join us this June for our fantastic new webinar series, where you'll learn everything you need to know about pensions to get you ready to confidently process pensions for your employees. With 7 live sessions and a fun learning quiz in the last session. Whether you're new to pensions or a dab hand, we have something for everyone. Here is what we've got lined up for you. Make a strong start to your pension processing with foundational knowledge on the basics of pensions and salary sacrifice pensions in Sage 50 Payroll. Explore how pension contributions are calculated and how your employees are assessed for automatic enrolment. We'll also take you through our 3 most popular sessions: navigating enrolment, getting started with pensions module, and using pensions data exchange to send your pension data to your provider with ease. And lastly, backed by popular demand, test your knowledge with our Pensions Discovery Quiz to see what you've learned across the sessions. Now, how do you get your hands on your Pensions Discovery digital badge? Simply attend 5 out of 7 of the live sessions and our quiz to earn your badge. And don't forget, you get free access to our new Accredible portal to manage your badges, so you can quickly and easily share your badge on socials for everyone to see. Don't miss out. Secure your spot and join us for an unforgettable learning experience this June by signing up at sage.co.uk/webinars. We'll see you there.
Hello everyone, that is just me back again. Thank you so much for watching that there. That's just Matt talking about the webinar series. A couple of other things to talk about. So the Sage Help Centre, sage.co.uk/help. All of the help articles and things like that I've been linking today, most of them have come from the Help Centre. So it's a really, really great resource if you do need to know a little bit more about certain topics. If you want to watch our webinar recordings as well, so sessions that we've done in the past, we do have a webinar section on there. Or if you do need to get into contact with technical support, we do have those contact options. But that is the Sage Help Centre, sage.co.uk/help. We also have Sage University, so that's sageu.com, where you'll be able to set up a free account and access different e-learning and bite-sized learning courses, as well as the opportunity to earn a product certification too. It's a really, really good way to expand your knowledge on Sage 50 Payroll, or if you've got other products with us too, so Sage 50 Accounts maybe, or Sage HR, there are loads of different training courses on those topics as well. But that has brought us to the end of the webinar for Pensions the Basics and Sage 50 Payroll. I just want to thank you so much for your time today. If you are leaving us now, remember to download the handouts and also feel free to copy and paste any of that Q&A if you would like to keep any of those questions or answers. I can see it's been very busy on the questions today, so I just want to say a massive thank you to Duncan for keeping up with those, and I will make sure that we've answered as many as we can before we end this session altogether. But last ask from me, you will see a short survey as you exit the webinar. So if you do have just a moment to fill that out, any comments to leave and things like that, we would really, really appreciate that. We do read all of the comments and take a look at all of the scores and just try to make these webinars as good as they can be. So thank you in advance. But I am going to go ahead and help Duncan on that Q&A panel. So stick around while I do, if you do still have some questions waiting for an answer. And again, feel free to copy and paste them if you need them for future reference. So I will be back in a couple of moments to wrap things up. Hello everyone, that is just me back again. Thank you so much for sending in all of those questions. We're just working on getting the last answers out to you. But yeah, thanks again for joining us today. I hope you do enjoy the rest of your week, and we'd love to see you on another webinar very soon, hopefully in this pension series, so you can earn your very own digital badge. But on behalf of me and Duncan, we will see you next time, and it's goodbye for now.